The PS1 gave us some of the best JRPGs of all time. Every year it seemed like we were just getting classic after classic. Some companies like Squaresoft were even giving us multiple per year. Keep in mind, these are like 50+ hour games we're talking about here. How were they able to fully complete all of these? You see, that's the thing. They didn't. Not always, at least. Due to a combination of factors like budget constraints and release deadlines, it wasn't uncommon for the second halves of some RPGs to feel a bit rushed. This could result in plot dumps, certain aspects not being explored as much as you would think, or in some cases, an entirely different way of presenting the story. In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the more infamous examples and figure out what exactly happened. I'm going to try to avoid any detailed spoilers for the most part. However, there'll likely be some moments where spoiler territory will have to be breached a bit in order to make a point. But don't worry, we will give spoiler warnings along with timestamps to skip whenever this happens though. With all that said, let's just dive into it. But first, we gotta cue that intro.
The light is your guide.
Dream is what keeps you going.
Now is the time to shape your story. Your fate is in your hands.
Alright, might as well start with the main inspiration and the thumbnail for this video, Xenogears. The first disc is one of the greatest experiences you'll find in the genre. You get to see a lot of the world with strong narrative reason to visit each unique location while meeting a wide array of memorable characters along the way. There's a fairly even mix of exploration, gameplay, and narrative focus. It's really all you can ask for. On your first playthrough, it wouldn't seem unreasonable to expect more of the same on Disc 2. But oh, how wrong you would be. Disc 2 plays absolutely nothing like the first disc. All that exploring at your own leisure? Gone. Now we get to experience the majority of the story through a series of plot dumps while we sit down in a chair. Yeah, I know. A lot of people consider this to be the one blemish on an otherwise near-flawless masterpiece. The game does open up again at the end, but yeah, for the most part, a lot of Disc 2 is relegated to the type of scenes you're seeing here. Personally speaking, this doesn't really affect my enjoyment of the game, as I've come to accept Disc 2 as just its own different experience. It only adds to the game's legacy, I feel, and is why I consider it a flawed masterpiece. However, I can understand why everyone wouldn't feel this way. It is a very jarring contrast to Disc 1. So, the question is then, what happened? Well, about a couple decades after its release, the director, Tetsuya Takahashi, finally confirmed the real story. Essentially, teams at Squaresoft were given 2 years to complete their projects. A lot of people on the Xenogears team in particular were younger developers that didn't really have much, if any, experience with 3D, so the extra time it took for them to learn these skills put them behind schedule. Takahashi eventually realized that there was just no way that they would be able to fully complete the extremely ambitious scope of his grand plan. His higher-ups actually suggested that he just end the game at Disc 1, which he felt would have been very unsatisfying. And I agree. If you've played Xenogears before, it's pretty hard to imagine the game just ending after Solaris. So Takahashi came up with the idea that if he changed up the delivery and turned a lot of it into more of a visual novel, he would still be able to complete the game and tell the story he wanted to tell. And that is why Disc 2 of Xenogears exists in the state that it does today. Given the circumstance, I think he definitely made the right decision. I mean, it was really the only option he had, I guess, as the other just sucked and would have been terrible. Ending the game at Disc 1 just would have left so many loose ends. Imagine how unsatisfying it would have been for numerous villains to get no resolution. Well, I don't have to imagine, because that's exactly what happened with our next game. Okay, well, with one villain at least, not multiple. There's really no way to talk about this next bit and not go into spoiler territory, so yeah, incoming spoilers regarding a particular villain in Breath of Fire 4. If you want to skip ahead, here's some timestamps. Okay, if you're still here and have played this game, you definitely know who I'm talking about. Yuna. Holy shit, this guy sucks. Every other villain in the game gets their comeuppance, yet the most despicable and reprehensible one of them just gets to walk away free. It's every bit as unsatisfying as it sounds. Throughout the game, Yuna commits some of the most heinous acts I've ever seen in a JRPG. The fact that he gets away with all of this and in the ending even states how he has no plans to stop just really pissed me off and made me not really care about anything else. The creepy, ominous music playing during this part only rubs this in and leaves me with a sour taste. For the longest time, it was rumored that it was initially planned for you to kill him in the end. However, they just ran out of time and couldn't fit it in. I could never find a source for this though. Well, until just recently that is. And it turns out it's only half true. A Breath of Fire art book was translated last year, and in it, the main writer of the game, Makoto Ikehara, answered some questions. When asked why Yuna wasn't killed in the end, he stated that he planned on either having Fulu's pet, Wankyu, maul him to death, or General Rune strangle him. However, time constraints wouldn't let them see this through. So yeah, he was indeed intended to die, just not by the hands of our party. It's kinda interesting they took the time to give him that scene in the ending when they could've used that time to kill him off instead, but I guess it does make sense. They would have had to create new assets for that, whereas with the ending we ended up getting, they were able to use pre-existing ones to save time. So yeah, I guess the case on this rumor is closed. Does it make the ending we actually got any less unfulfilling? I mean, not really, but it's a nice thought at least. In Breath of Fire, 4's defense though, the game still has pretty even pacing for the most part and doesn't really feel like it's rushed in the end. Not super noticeably at least, which isn't the same I can say for the next two games I want to talk about. Let's start with another Squaresoft game, Chrono Cross. Chrono Cross is one of my all-time favorite RPGs. However, the last part of it also has some of the worst pacing I've ever seen. The first disc, similar to Xenogears, is a pretty perfect first disc in what it sets out to do. The plot unravels at a fairly even pace and sprinkles in just enough important narrative to keep you invested. It's a very personal, atmospheric, and reflective journey that proposes some interesting viewpoints regarding the pursuit of different paths in life and the effects they have on not only ourselves, but our surroundings as well. Now, it doesn't necessarily feel anything like Chrono Trigger, I will say, but still, as its own thing, it's an extremely well-made disc. Unfortunately, once we get to Chronopolis in Disc 2, the pacing takes a complete nosedive. Chronopolis? More like plot dump-opolis.
Right?
Yeah, that was really stupid, but also accurate. It kinda feels like they thought, oh shit, I guess we gotta start tying this back into Chrono Trigger in some way, don't we? I'll spare you the details and won't go into spoilers, but yeah, let's just say a lot of important lore gets explained in a very short amount of time. There's a lot of really cool ideas at play here, so it's just a shame they didn't get the necessary room to breathe and time to sink in. The plot dumps on Opasa Beach at the very end are debatably even more egregious, but I won't even get into that as the point has already been made, and that is that the end of the game just feels extremely rushed. So, what's the reasoning why things turned out the way? Time. It's literally always just time. I don't know why I ever acted like it was anything else. I can't fault them for wanting to shoot for the stars, but damn, it's pretty hard not to imagine what if. Squaresoft seemed to have a recurring problem of their ambition simply just outmatching their schedule. They definitely weren't the only ones, however, it did seem to happen with them a decent amount. It's no wonder they were able to release so many games back then. In games like Chrono Cross and Xenogears though, at least their plot dumps were mandatory and forced upon you. They may have been handled in sloppy ways, but all the info needed was still relayed to the player. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same for our next game, Star Ocean 2. I think Star Ocean 2 is a phenomenal game that excels in gameplay, optional content, and the depth of its various systems. However, the story is not what I'd call one of its strong points. Disc 2 only exacerbates this, quite heavily. It's not until the final moments of the first disc that the main villains are introduced for the first time, and there's 10 of them. Considering Disc 2 is half the length of the first one, you can see where issues are starting to form. Now, do these villains and the vital lore surrounding them get fleshed out during the main story? Of course not. Instead, pretty much everything is explained through optional textbooks at a library. I mean, it is mentioned and recommended to check out, but still, this info is way too substantial to only be given as an option. Without reading these, most of the 10 wise men have little to no motivation. Want to know the worst part? The main antagonist's entire backstory is locked behind an optional side quest that the majority of players will not do. This is a design choice I just can't get behind. It's one thing to run out of time and to have to resort to plot dumps in order to finish telling your story, but doing that and making the player go out of their way to see it all? Nah, inexcusable. I'm not going to go into spoilers here about the specifics, but if you want to hear my thoughts that do, we do have a 2-hour retrospective on the game where I go into way more detail. The same goes for Chrono Cross and Breath of Fire 4 actually, however, those ones are only 40 minutes. Guess that only leaves us with Xenogears in this video to make one on them. One day, my friends. But yeah, anyway, there are some other games that I could probably also talk about in this video, but these 4 stick out to me the most. I'm happy we at least got what we did. If it was between either a rushed second disc or just not finishing the game at all, obviously I'd take the former all day. After the PS1 generation, rushed games became less of the norm as development cycles tended to increase in length by quite a bit. Sure, games aren't usually rushed anymore, but it's at the cost of their output essentially being cut in half, probably even less. So yeah, who's to really say what's better or worse? I guess it just depends how you look at it. I for one think it's pretty damn cool that we got these clearly flawed and rushed games that still manage to resonate with so many people and leave a lasting impact, myself included. Xenogears has my favorite story in all of JRPGs and is just a top 10 JRPG for me in general. Same with Chrono Cross. Breath of Fire 4 and Star Ocean 2 are probably in my top 20. I think it just goes to show that the lesson here is that there's still beauty in the imperfections. At the end of the day, if a game gives players a fun time along with fond memories to look back on, well, that's really all I can ask for.
Push it in! Work your body, work your body.
When you walk away, you don't hear me say, please, oh baby, don't go. Simple and clean is the way that you're making me feel tonight. It's hard to let it go.
Kingdom Hearts for PlayStation 2, rated E for everyone.
Squaresoft.
Alright, and that about wraps up this video. Thanks for watching everyone, we hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please either consider hitting that like button or subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. What are some other rushed PS1 RPGs that I didn't talk about here? Hell, it doesn't even have to be on the PS1, it could be any console. Also, did any of the examples I talked about here bother you at all, or were you still able to fully enjoy the games? Let us know in the comments. To be honest, I wish I would have talked about Final Fantasy VIII and found a way to work it into the script. However, at the very least, I do want to give it a brief mention now. The first 2 discs are some of the best experiences in the entire Final Fantasy series. They're extremely polished and have a focused plot. Discs 3 and 4 though, not so much. The pacing takes some very weird turns and the plot loses some focus. It's a bit of a mess, to be honest. It makes sense why though. According to the director, Laguna was initially supposed to get the same amount of content as Squall. However, because they ended up focusing on Squall, a lot of his scenes got cut. So yeah, just thought that was a fun little factoid to share. As always, just want to give a huge shout out to our Patreon supporters, and of course an extra special shout out to our top patrons, Chris Carnaccio, Derek Drost, Jam, Jesse Spencer, J-Ho, Joe Bro the Hobo, J Shaw Drums, Jump Rock, and Spankwise. All of your generosity and support is very much appreciated. Other than that, thanks again for watching everyone and hope you have an awesome day. This is Corbin from Gaming Productions. Until next time.